Hello everyone, back tuning into the final GWV Sunday Round Up of the year. So throughout this year, we've been having our usual eclectic mix of this and that for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. We've come to the end of the Sunday Roundups now because next week the winter updates will begin. Every Sunday from next Sunday, we will do a winter update as an extended video, and most of the stuff that's within the Sunday Roundup, like solar activity, like sea surface temperature anomalies, what's happening with ENSO, all of that stuff forms a big part of the winter update. So we would just be repeating ourselves really a lot of the time if we did the Sunday Roundup with the winter update. So basically the Sunday Roundups get shelved, put on the shelf in favour of the winter updates through the autumn season. Then we get to December, we have a little bit of a rest in December from the longer range stuff. So the upshot is the Sunday Roundups will be back after today at the beginning of 2019, at the beginning of the new year. But we've got this one last Sunday Roundup to do for you, so I'll get on with that very shortly. Just to say that we've also released the autumn forecast. You can find that video here on the homepage. Just scroll down the page a little bit and it's the pollen count. That video will be placed on the autumn forecast page later on today with a written summary. You normally get that up around 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. I'll see if I can do it a bit earlier today, but it will be placed on the autumn forecast page later on. Very, very difficult forecast. One of the hardest seasonal forecasts I've ever had to do. Very, very conflicting signals. And I will actually talk a little bit about it in this Sunday Roundup as well later on. So stand by for that. Coming up this afternoon, because now that the autumn forecast is out of the way, so coming up around 5 o'clock this afternoon, we'll have your little sneak peek for the winter of 2018-19. That's just to get you set up for next week's winter update. So we'll go through the methodology with that sneak peek. Basically, we'll tell you everything that we're going to be looking at through the autumn season with the winter updates. And at the end, there'll be a couple of long-range seasonal models thrown in, just for you to have a quick look at for the winter of 2018-19. But the proper winter updates, as I say, get underway next weekend. Right, so got quite a bit to discuss for this final Sunday Roundup of 2018. Let's get on with it. We're going to start off looking at solar activity. So this is the solar disk on our side of this today from solarham.net. Solar activity has just crept up a little bit over the past few days. We have got a couple of sunspot areas just there and another one just there. Solar activity is at low levels, very low levels, and expected to remain so over the next 3 days, according to a report at solarham.net. We may get some C-class flares coming up within the next 3 days, but overall solar activity is at very low levels and expected to remain so. This is regards to this Sunday Roundup solar activity tracker sent through by our good friend James Ackroyd. Big thank you to James for sending this through today and for keeping this updated throughout this season of Sunday Roundups that we've been doing since the start of the year. You'll be seeing this every week within the winter updates, by the way. So it just changes from the Sunday Roundup solar activity tracker to the winter updates solar activity tracker. You can see what's been going on over the past few days. So it went for a very, very low level of solar activity from kind of like the middle of July through to the sort of middle of August. That period just there had a very long run without hardly any sunspots, just a few sunspots there. But basically, we had a month with very, very little solar activity whatsoever. Actually, sunspots have crept up just a little bit over the past week or so. So you can see here the orange line, which is depicting each day's worth of sunspot numbers. That's lifting up a bit, and that's also lifting the trend lines up as well. The thick green and the thick red lines are lifting up a little bit there also. This is a very small tick up. It looks perhaps a little bit more dramatic than it is, to be honest. It's a very small tick up that's going on at the moment. But yes, we have lifted solar activity up ever so slightly. We are probably around 6 to 12 months away from solar minimum, so you would expect these little tick-ups to be taking place, but all the time the trend is down, and we will get more and more runs, such as we have from July to August, without any solar activity whatsoever, which will leave us on the floor of the graph with these trend lines. So yes, a little bit of a tick up has taken place over the past couple of days with sunspots, but overall we remain at a very minimal level of solar activity, and we can expect to remain at a very minimal level of solar activity over the next couple of years, really. Even as we start solar cycle 25, it'll take a while to ramp that solar cycle up. So the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years, likely to have very low levels of solar activity, and sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, I anticipate we will be at solar minimum. The reason we look at solar activity is that there is an association between low levels of solar activity, low sunspot numbers, and a risk of an increased risk of blocking over the North Pole during the winter. So solar minimum, low levels of solar activity can be associated with an increased chance of blocking over the pole. Blocking is a route to getting cold air out of the pole and down to the mid-latitudes. We are in the mid-latitudes, of course. So essentially, round solar minimum, you increase the chance, load the dice, if you like, a little bit in favour of colder winters. So we'll be looking at solar activity as a big part of the winter updates, of course, and they get underway in a week's time. This is how sea surface temperature anomalies are looking across the world, or were looking last week when we did last week's Sunday Round Up. 3 specific areas of interest. We've got the ENSO region just there, we've got the Northern Pacific up here, and then we've got the Northern Atlantic Ocean over there. That's how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking last week. This is the very latest. So let's deal with the ENSO region first. Well, we released the final ENSO update of the year on Friday. We won't need to do any more ENSO updates because, again, they'll form a big part of the winter updates as well. So, again, just to go over what we talked about in the ENSO update, basically, the modelling is still, particularly CFS-V2, still trying to get us into a moderate El Nino event, although the ECMWF and Jamstech models have backed away from that El Nino event. But actually, on the surface of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies, there is very little sign of it. So quite what's going on, I'm not sure. I think the models, particularly the CFS-V2, might be a little bit biased in favour of El Nino. They keep trying to produce these El Nino events year after year, and very often they don't actually come to very much. We're possibly in another one of those situations. We have got some warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies towards Peru, but that's fairly shallow water, so probably being impacted more by the weather conditions in Peru, if anything. And then we've got this blue area just here, which is actually a slightly colder than average area of sea surface temperature. It's more towards the central part of the equatorial Pacific. That is not something that you would expect to see if you was going into an El Nino, I can assure you of that. So as a very, very little sign in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies, very little sign of El Nino at all at the moment. It's very late on now. We're into the latter stages of August. And if we was going to get a moderate El Nino, you'd expect it to be taking off by now. So we might go into a very weak, borderline, sort of weak El Nino to ENSO neutral. But I think sort of a moderate El Nino is going to be very unlikely from this late in the year, with barely any signs of it in the equatorial Pacific Ocean at the moment. And we've still got these colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies around Chile. Again, that is not something that you associate with an El Nino. Normally, if you're going to have an El Nino, you'll be warmer than average with the sea surface temperature anomalies there, and you would kind of push those colder sea surface temperature anomalies there into the middle of the South Pacific. So it all just looks a little bit wrong, really, to have an El Nino, but the CFS-V2 is still very set on it, so quite why the CFS is still set on this moderate El Nino, I'm not sure. Somewhere along the line there's going to have to be a back down. Either the CFS is going to have to back down, or things are going to have to shift very, very quickly with these sea surface temperature anomalies in the middle of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Further north, it's generally quite a warm scene in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. In the Atlantic, so again, very little change really. Let's take you back to last week. That's how things were looking in the Atlantic Ocean last week. This is the 80s. So we've still got this colder than average area sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland. It's still very warm off the coast of Newfoundland and up the northeastern seaboard of America. The tropical Atlantic is warming very gradually week by week. So a couple of months ago, it was fairly cool there with the sea surface temperature. As things have warmed up, if they get much warmer, then we might start to see some increased tropical storm and hurricane activity. It's possible we will. It's been a very quiet start to this hurricane season, but it won't totally rule out the chance that we might start to see things perking up a little bit in the tropical Atlantic in the next month or so if those sea surface temperature anomalies continue to warm up over the next month or so. The fact that El Nino appears to be stalling as well is something that might increase the chance of picking up this hurricane season once again. Now, going back to the autumn forecast, so very, very conflicting signals with the autumn forecast. Our analogues are suggesting that actually 1976, the drought summer of 1976, comes out as the leading analogue for this autumn. But along with that, we've also got 1989 as a very important player in this year's autumn analogues. They are very, very different autumns indeed. We've also got 2006 as quite an important player this year for the autumn analogues. And also 1878 is coming out as quite an important analogue this year. So I'll just talk you through the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic over these years, but have been important players in terms of our autumn analogues this year. So this is 2006. This is how sea surface temperature anomalies were looking in 2006. You can see the Northern Atlantic much warmer at this point in 2006, much warmer in the Northern Atlantic compared to the current situation. So I don't think the sea surface temperature anomalies are particularly close to between this year and 2006, so that's a bit of a snag in terms of 2006 coming out as a leading analogue. Sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic are not close, particularly to this year. Notice at this point in 2006, early September, we was already seeing good signs of the El Nino that was going to develop through 2006 and 2007. This is 1989. This is September 1989 sea surface temperature anomalies. You'll notice the northern part of the Atlantic does actually look quite cold. So that's closer, I think, to the current situation. Compared certainly to 2006, maybe a little bit more extensive with those colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies. So they do stretch really from like western Scotland over towards western parts of Greenland there. Also not as warm around Newfoundland, so just there it's very warm at the moment, and cooler through the tropical Atlantic as well. So I don't really think there's a particularly close match between this year's sea surface temperature anomalies 1989 either. Now this is going back to 1868. This is how the sea surface temperatures look reanalysis. What we just looked at before is satellite data. Of course, satellite data only begins in the late 1970s, early 1980s. So before that, we have to rely on reanalysis charts. So this is how the reanalysis sea surface temperature anomalies look for September 1868, and this one, so again, not a particularly close match at all to 2018 in terms of those sea surface temperature anomalies. Very cold sea surface temperature anomalies to the north of the UK, so kind of like in the Norwegian Sea. It's warm up there at the moment. It was really cold up there in September 1868. So again, much colder through the tropical Atlantic than it is at the moment as well. So again, no similarity really between sea surface temperature anomalies now for this coming autumn and the autumn of 1868. Notice quite a strong El Nino getting going as well by September 1868 in the Pacific Ocean. So again, I think we can discount that in terms of those sea surface temperature anomalies. And then that finally leaves us with 1976. 1976 has come out with our autumn analogues as the leading analogue, really, for this autumn. This was a very wet autumn, phenomenally wet autumn in 1976, as we broke the drought that began at the end of 1974 and went on through to the summer of 1976. That was like the conclusion, the climax of the Great Drought was the summer of 1976. And then in the autumn of 76, we broke that drought big time. And 76 has come out as like the leading analogue for this autumn. In terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies for September 1976, again, we're relying on reanalysis. We can't look at satellite data, so it is probably a little bit unreliable. But we can see we did have a colder area to like the southeast of Greenland, so that's perhaps a little bit closer to the current situation, although the Norwegian Sea now is really quite warm, and back in 1976 that was like average to a little bit on the cooler side. So it also had some warm sea surface temperature anomalies off the coast of Africa, but actually the western part of the tropical Atlantic was quite cold. So again, I don't think that's a particularly good match to this year either. So really struggling actually with the analogues this year, and certainly from an Atlantic perspective, it doesn't look like any of the leading analogues actually match up to this year in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic. For the autumn forecast, we've gone for like a blend between 76 and 89. So they're at two ends of the extreme. 76, very wet autumn. 1989, very dry autumn. So we've kind of like gone in the middle and suggested perhaps slightly above average rainfall, but nowhere near as wet as 76 was. And overall, rather a mild autumn as well. There's no particularly strong signal for a cold autumn. We think if there is going to be a cold month, it would more likely be in November. But again, that is a relatively low probability. Overall, a relatively mild, rather changeable, and I suppose you could say in some ways rather average sort of autumn with nothing all that dramatic going on. But it is a very, very difficult forecast, this, for the autumn of 2018. So it is really low confidence stuff, to say the least. We're just going to have to see how it plays out. Right, coming back to the situation at the moment then, we've got a lot of wet weather heading in across the country at the moment. This is the latest radar from theweatheroutlook.com. You see heavy rain is moving in across the UK, a proper soaker of a day. This is how the high-resolution arpège model is forecasting this precipitation to develop. So let's run through here. You can see a really wet spell of weather coming up through the rest of the morning and into the afternoon. This is 2 o'clock this afternoon, pouring with rain across many parts of the country. The rain continues up to 5 o'clock across central and east areas, although it is clearing in the west, and then we do get a clearance through the evening as things turn a lot drier. Still showers continuing in the north and west, but a lot drier by the time we get through to this evening. And then tomorrow looks a better day, better for bank holiday Monday. So I suppose it's better to time this wet weather for Sunday rather than Monday. Much drier through the course of tomorrow. Temperatures will be cool though. It's going to be very cold under this persistent rain for the time of year. Temperatures only kind of like 12, 13, 14 degrees under this persistent rain. When it clears, it will turn a little bit milder. Temperature will recover a bit, but only up to like 17 or 18. So overall, it is going to be quite a cold day coming up. GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking like this for the next couple of weeks. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. Looking at London today, we're starting off cool to cold today. Temperatures will pick up a little bit in the next few hours with this area of low pressure. It's got a warmer sector with it, but we won't realise that temperature potential because it's going to be cloudy and wet. And then tomorrow looks rather cool again. Tuesday warms up a bit, and then through the second half of the week turns really cool again with the upper air temperatures. And watch out for cold nights coming up in the second half of the week. I won't show you that for this video, but I can say I've had a look at the minimum temperatures coming up in the second half this week, and we are getting perilously close to ground frost levels, even down into like northern England, Wales and the Midlands in the second half of this week. So some really chilly nights coming up in the second half of the week. And then over the weekend, this is 1st of September, just here, this is the first week into the second week of September. Through that period, we see the ensembles are lifting up, so it looks like it's turning warmer through the first week of September. We've talked about this in videos a lot just lately. Warmer and drier conditions through the first week of September. This is precipitation spike associated with today's rain. Once that's out of the way, a reasonable amount of dry weather really for Manchester. Temperature anomalies in the next week look like that, coming out a little bit cooler than average. Expect these to trend warmer over the next few days, but at the moment, from the 25th of August to the 2nd of September, we're still coming out cooler than average with those temperature anomalies. Precipitation anomalies from the 26th of August, 2nd of September. Overall, a little bit drier than average through most parts of the country, although the far southeast comes out a little bit wetter than average. In America, things have turned warmer. This is a temperature anomaly for America from the 25th of August, 2nd of September. All states really coming out milder than average or warmer than average from the west coast over to the east coast. So a really warm week coming up for much of the states. Precipitation wise, it's very dry out in the western part of the states. Over in the east, it does look a little bit wetter for those central and eastern states. Tropical activity looks like this. So tropical cyclone activity is not expected during the next 48 hours in the Atlantic. This is from National Hurricane Center, of course, so very quiet in the Atlantic with this hurricane season, and that continues for the next 48 hours. In the eastern tropical Pacific, we see it's a little bit more lively as it has been throughout this season. So we've got this area just here, that is 15E. That's a tropical depression, not a tropical storm yet, but it is a tropical depression. There in the eastern part of the tropical Atlantic Ocean. And then we've got this orange X just here. That's got a 40 to 60% chance of becoming a tropical disturbance, maybe a depression or a storm, possibly even a hurricane eventually. That's got a 40 to 60% chance of developing into a tropical depression in the next 48 hours. At the moment, it's just an area of thunderstorms. And then this is Lane. So Lane continues close to the Hawaiian Islands. It is now down to tropical storm status, so it's been downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical storm, and it's to the southwest of the Hawaiian Islands. Should be clearing the Hawaiian Islands very shortly. Right, so this is how things are looking close to home with the GFS. We've got low pressure moving in from the Atlantic on Wednesday to the north of Scotland. So that'll bring some showery rain to them. Still messing about with this area of low pressure to the south. It now looks like it's just going to clip the extreme southeast on Tuesday night into Wednesday. Probably bring some wet weather to them. Then we go through to Thursday and Friday, and we bring this high pressure in across the country, but it's within cool air, so that's when we're getting these cold nights coming up at the end of the weekend of that area of high pressure. Next weekend sees this high pressure repositioning itself and kind of becoming centred just to the southeast of the country, and that pulls the winds up from a southerly direction, so it becomes warmer next weekend and dry. We could see temperatures into the mid-20s Celsius with that high pressure. That continues into the early part of next week as well, and we do start to drag up some even warmer air from the south through the early part of next week. This is Tuesday, 4th of September. We're pulling up a proper southerly there with this low pressure out to the west. So that could lift temperatures into the upper 20s Celsius there, so going back to 80 Fahrenheit with this morning's GFS. But this low pressure out to the west-southwest of us looks as though it will add instability into the mix, and this could be quite thundery stuff actually by the middle of next week. This is Wednesday 5th. We might be seeing some thunderstorms breaking out as this low pressure gets closer from off the Atlantic Ocean. By Thursday the 6th, just a little bit beyond day 10, that low pressure is sitting over the top of the country, bringing showers, longer spells of rain and cooler weather as well. It's not long before we get back to the high pressure, only extended range. We're doing it all over again. We go up to Tuesday 11th of September and the high pressure's back in, and we're bringing up quite warm southerly to southeasterly winds once again. ECMWF looks like that, so rather showery on Wednesday. Then we build the high pressure through Thursday and Friday. That's within cool air, so there will be some cold nights coming up in the second half of the week, not ruling out ground frost as far south as Wales and the Midlands. Next weekend, ECM has come into line with the GFS now, so they was disagreeing yesterday, but now the ECM looks much closer to the GFS, with high pressure building through the country next weekend and turning warmer as well, so temperatures could be into the mid-20s Celsius there. Through to the early part of the following week, this is Tuesday the 4th of September, heading up towards day 10. It looks pretty dry and warm, particularly for the south. Not as warm as what the GFS is showing, I have to say. That's how we look at day 10, which is Wednesday the 5th of September. High pressure is across the south. The north looks a little bit more unsettled. And then the GEM looks like that. So Wednesday we've got that low pressure closer to us. That may bring some quite wet weather into the southeast on Wednesday. By Thursday it's off the coast of East Anglia, putting down these cooler northerly winds. Then into next weekend, the GEM is still rather unsettled for next weekend. So we've got a weather system coming through on Saturday. That's been cloud and rain, and the temperatures are a lot cooler as well for next weekend with the GEM compared to the other two models. Eventually we do get some above average pressure building to the south. We get some high pressure building to the south. So this is Monday the 3rd of September, when we are starting to drag up some warmer air into the south. Mid-20s Celsius certainly possible there, although the north still looks a little bit cooler and changeable. And then that's how we finish up at day 10 with the GEM pushing through this ridge, so mainly dry, not overly warm though with that ridge. If I show you finally the upper air temperatures with the GEM, actually they're nothing to get particularly excited about. So the GEM remains a cooler solution compared to the other two models for this first week of September. Still not total agreement about what's going to happen with the first week of September. CFS V2 looking like this for the next month. These are the 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 26th of August to 1st of September. Rather changeable this week, with below average heights up to the north, bringing the flow and the jet stream through like that. Above average heights pushing into northeastern parts of Europe. Then we go through to week 2, which is the 2nd to the 8th of September. Above average heights to the south and to the southeast, but still an area below average heights around Iceland. So this is a rather cooler and slightly more unsettled scenario from CFS V2 for this first week of September. Week 3 looks like that. It's the 9th to the 15th of September, with above average heights to the east and to the west, below average heights up to the north. The flow and the jet is doing something rather like that. So even that one, although the above average heights are a little bit stronger, even that one looks rather unsettled. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 5th, which is 16th to 22nd of September. Looks like we've got the above average heights migrating to Iceland and Greenland there. So mainly dry, but probably pulling down some quite chilly air from the north. So the CFS now is not as warm on this particular update as it was when we did JMA Friday. Temperature anomalies of CFS V2 are coming out cooler than average for the week ahead. Week 2 temperature anomalies, this is the first week of September, and northern parts of the country are still coming out cooler than average. England and Wales only coming out around average, although notice many parts of Europe are very warm. So the CFS is undecided, I think, about this first week of September, as is all of the other model output. Still very uncertain pattern for this first week of September. Week 3 temperature anomalies from the 9th to the 15th of September. Overall, rather cool for the northern part of the country, close to average for the south. And then week 4 possibly does get us to a little bit warmer than average. This one is the 16th to the 22nd of September. Precipitation looks like that, so the week ahead is coming out close to average, maybe hints of being a bit wetter than average for the west. Week 2 precipitation is also close to average. Week 3 precipitation is again close to average, so not a big deviation expected in terms of precipitation over the next month. Week 4 comes out a little bit drier than average from the 16th to the 22nd of September. All rather inconclusive for September. This September is causing all sorts of problems trying to pin it down, I have to say. And then finally, we'll just look at the Beijing Climate Center 500 millibar height anomalies for the next 40 days. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period takes us from the 26th of August to the 4th of September, with above average heights out to the west of the country, below average heights up to the north, bringing the flow and the jet through rather like that. So northern areas a little bit unsettled, the south mainly dry, and so with the westerly flow probably not overly warm either. The next 10-day period is the 5th to the 14th of September, with above average heights again to the west of us. The flow and the jet is doing something like that. So that's a more settled period there from the 5th to the 14th of September. Again, the main position of the ridge, though, is to the west of the country, so we always keep a bit of influence from the Atlantic, so it wouldn't be overly hot. Then we go through to the next 10-day period, which is the 15th to 24th of September. The above average heights pull out into the middle of the Atlantic. We lower the heights to the northeast. If we come over here, we're lowering the heights over Scandinavia. That's probably turning the wind into a northwesterly, so that's cooler, and certainly for the northern eastern parts of the country, probably a little bit more unsettled as well. Then the final 10-day period, which is the 25th of September to the 4th of October, the above average heights are kind of like to the north and northwest of us, so we lower the heights to the south. That would be turning the wind into an east or northeasterly as we go into the end of September and the start of October. With below average heights to the south, we're probably turning things more unsettled as well. So that's cooler and more unsettled for the end of September and into the start of October, turning significantly more autumnal as we end September and move into October. All very highly experimental, of course, with those long-range models, so they're not to be relied upon. In fact, all of the model output at the moment seems rather unreliable. There's still a lot of chopping and changing going on with the model output, even for the first week of September, although I think we're probably inching our way towards, certainly for a few days anyway, in the early part of September, some drier and warmer conditions. If you've enjoyed today's video content, can you please consider becoming a patron for GWV? So this is GWV's Patreon page. You can sign up to Patreon, and by doing that, you can become a patron for GWV, where you give GWV a monthly donation. We've got 26 patrons so far, so a big thank you to all of the patrons for GWV. Your donation, your monthly donation, can be anything from $1 a month, so it doesn't have to be a large amount of money whatsoever. But a big thank you to all of the patrons for GWV so far, and if you'd like to become a patron for GWV, please click the link to the Patreon page. It's in the description box at YouTube, and we link to this on all of the pages at GWV. The other way of giving a donation to GWV is to come to the GWV PayPal page. This is it. I'm on the GWV PayPal page right now. So this is very simple. If you've got a PayPal account, you just sign into that, and then you come to the GWV PayPal page, and you pledge any amount of money that you would like for a one-off donation. And again, we've had loads of donors, as well as loads of patrons, had loads of donors for GWV, and a big thank you to all of the patrons and all of the donors for GWV. It's helping us to pay for our website, helping us to keep all of the content completely free of charge. You'll get a shout out in the videos if you want one. If you'd rather not have one, then just leave a note, little note with your donation, and we'll get that, and we'll just thank sort of this anonymous donor if you like, if you'd rather not have a mention. But if you would like to have a mention in the videos, then again, become a patron for GWV, or give us a donation via our PayPal page, and we'll say thank you very much in the videos. Right, so that's it, 33 minutes, and we have reached the end of the GWV Sunday Roundup. So no more Sunday Roundups after today. We put them on the shelf, as I said inside the video, they'll go on the shelf for the winter updates. Winter updates will begin just 1 week away, will be update number 1 for the winter of 2018-19. If you want to know what we'll be looking at through the winter updates, then come back this afternoon for that winter 18-19 sneak peek. There'll be a couple of long-range seasonal models in with that as well, just to whet your appetite for the winter updates, which I say they start in 1 week's time. Don't forget to check out the autumn forecast if you haven't yet done so. And one thing I'm not spoken about is tomorrow's historic video. So the historic video coming up for your Bank Holiday Monday tomorrow, we'll be looking at, we just talked about it in the video actually, 1868. We'll be looking at the hot summer of 1868 through the autumn and into the exceptionally warm winter of 1868-1869, although it ended on a pretty cold note. So it was a real wild ride from summer of 1868 through to the winter of 1869. You'll find out more about that in tomorrow's historic video. Right, at 35 minutes, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.